Hello, my name is Patricia Lee Chavez from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Happy to be here today in support of Lavender Libros and supporting Councilor Cynthia Borrego and our entire city council in the reading of this book, The Velveteen Rabbit, one of my absolute favorite books of all time. Let us begin. I hope you'll enjoy it just as much as I do. There was once a Velveteen rabbit, and in the beginning, he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white, and he had thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink sateen. On Christmas morning, when he sat wedged on top of the boy's stocking with a sprig of holly between his paws, the effect was charming. There were other things in the stocking, nuts and oranges and a toy engine and chocolate almonds and a clockwork mouse. But the rabbit was quite the best of all. For at least 2 hours the boy loved him. And then the aunts and uncles came to dinner, the tios and tias, and there was a great rustling of tissue paper, an unwrapping of the parcels. You see the bunny? Isn't he beautiful? And looking at all the new presents, the Velveteen rabbit was soon forgotten. For a long time he lived in the toy cupboard or on a nursery floor, and no one thought very much about him. He was naturally shy, only being made of velveteen. Some of the more expensive toys quite snubbed him. The mechanical toys were very superior and looked down upon every one of them. They were full of modern ideas, and they pretended they were real. The modern boat, who had lived through 2 seasons, lost most of his paint, caught the tone from them, and never missed the opportunity of referring to his rigging in technical terms. The rabbit could not claim to be a model of anything, for he didn't know that real rabbits existed. He thought they were all stuffed with sawdust like himself, and he understood that sawdust was quite out of date and should never be mentioned in modern terms. Even Timothy, the jointed wooden lion who was made by the disabled soldiers and should have had broader views, put on airs and pretended he was connected with the government. Well, between them all, the poor little rabbit was made to feel himself very insignificant and commonplace, and the only person who was kind to him at all was a skin horse. The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old, and his brown coat was bald in patches and sewed the seams underneath. And most of his hairs in his tail had been pulled out to make string necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive to boast and swagger, and by break their mainsprings and pass away. He knew that they were only toys and would never turn into anything else, for nursery magic is very strange and wonderful, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced, like the skin horse, understand all about it. That's quite a skin horse, isn't it? What is real? Asked the rabbit one day, when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy up the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and stick out handles?
Real isn't how you're made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real.
Does it hurt? Said the little rabbit.
Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt.
Does it happen all at once, like being wound up? Or bit by bit?
It doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a very long time.
That's why it doesn't happen to people who break easily or who have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept or primped, as they would say. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose joints and are very, very shabby. But those things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, even to people that don't understand you. I suppose you are real. And then he wished that he had not said it, the little rabbit, for he thought the skin horse might be sensitive. But the skin horse only smiled big. The boy's uncle made me real. That was a great many, many years ago. But once you are real, you can't become unreal. You stay real and last you for always. The rabbit sighed. He thought it would be a long time before this magic called real would happen to him. He longed and longed to become real, to know what it felt like, and yet the idea of growing shabby and losing his eyes and whiskers was rather sad. He wished that he could become it without feeling uncomfortable and things happening to him. There was a person called Nana who rolled the nursery. Sometimes she took no notice of the playthings lying about, and sometimes, for no reason at all, she would come swooping about with a great wind and hustling away in the cupboards, and she called this tidying up, and the playthings all hated it, especially the tin ones. The rabbit didn't mind it much, for whenever he was thrown about, he came down soft. One evening, when the boy was going to bed, he couldn't find the china doll that had been sleeping with him. Nana was in a hurry, and it was way too much trouble to hunt for that china doll at bedtime. So she simply looked about her, and seeing that the toy cupboard door stood wide open, she made a quick swoop. "Here, take your old bunny. He'll do to sleep with you tonight." And she dragged the rabbit down by one ear and put it into the boy's arms. That night, for many nights, the Velveteen rabbit slept in the boy's bed. At first he found it rather uncomfortable, for the boy hugged him very tight, and sometimes he rolled over on top of him. And sometimes he pushed him so far into the pillow that the rabbit would scarcely be able to breathe. Oh my gosh, we've heard a lot about breaths and not being able to breathe. It isn't a good thing at all. And he missed, too, those long moonlight hours in the nursery, with the house was silent and he talks with the skin horse. But very soon he grew to like it, for the boy used to talk to him, and he made nice tunnels for him under the blankets. And they were like little burrows that the real rabbits lived in. And he had splendid games they played in whispers. And when Nana was gone away to her supper and left the night burning on the mantelpiece, and when the boy dropped off to sleep, he would snuggle down close under the little warm chin and dream, and the boy's hands clasped close around him all night long. And so time went on, and the little rabbit was very happy, so happy that he didn't even notice how beautiful. His velveteen fur was getting shabbier and shabbier, and his tail was coming unsewn, and all the pink rubbed off his nose where the boy had kissed him. Spring came, and they had long days in the garden, for wherever the boy went, the rabbit went too. He had rides in the wheelbarrow, and the picnics in the grass, and lovely fairies' huts built for him underneath the raspberry canes along the flower border. And the flower garden was full of raspberries. You see them? You see those little raspberries and how cuddly the bunny is? The boy in this garden, look at this garden. I have to stop and show this to you. This is simply fantastic. Look at the boy with his little bunny in the garden. He was suddenly called away to go to tea, and the rabbit fell out of the lawn, and long after dusk, the Nana came to look for him, and the candle with her candle because the boy couldn't go to sleep unless he was there. He went through with the dew quite earthily from diving into the burrows the boy had made for him in the flower bed, and Nana grumbled, and she rubbed him off with the corner of her apron. "You must have your bunny. You must have that bunny. Fancy all that fuss for a toy." The boy sat up in bed and stretched out his hands. "Give me my bunny, give me my bunny. You mustn't say that. He isn't a toy. He's real, he's real." When the little rabbit heard that, he was happy, and he knew that what the skin horse had said was true at last. The nursery magic had happened to him, and he was toy no longer. He was real. The boy himself had said it. The night was almost so happy to go to sleep. That bunny he had so much love stirred in his little sawdust heart. It almost burst. It almost burst. His button eyes, they had long lost their polish. They came a look of wisdom and beauty, so that even Nana noticed that next morning that when she picked him up, I declare if that old bunny hasn't gotten quite a knowing expression. That was a wonderful summer. Look at that bunny. Look at him. Near the house where they had lived was a wood, and in the long June evenings the boys liked to go there after tea to play. He took the Velveteen rabbit with him, and before he wandered off to pick flowers or play brigades amongst the trees, he always made the rabbit a little nest amongst the brackens, where he would be quite cozy, for he was a kind-hearted little boy and liked the bunny to be very comfortable. So one evening, while the rabbit was lying alone, watching the ants running to and fro between his velvet paws in the grass, he saw two strange beings creep out in the tall weeds next to him. They were rabbits like himself, but quite furry and brand new. You see 'em? You see 'em? They must be very well made, for their seams didn't show at all, and they changed shape in a queer way when they moved. One minute they were long and thin, and the next minute fat and bunchy, instead of always staying the same like he did. Their feet patted softly on the ground, and they crept quite close to him, watching and twitching their noses while the rabbit stared hard to see which side the clockwork stuck out, for he knew that people who jump generally have something to wind up in them. But he couldn't see it. They were evidently a new kind of rabbit altogether. They stared at him, and the little rabbit stared right back. At the time, their nose even twitched. Why don't you get up and play with us?" they asked. "Why don't you get up and play with us?" "Oh, no. I don't feel like it," said the rabbit, for he didn't want to explain that they had no clockwork. "Ho!" said the furry rabbit. "It's an easy as anything." And he gave a big hop sideways and stood up on his hind legs. "I don't believe you can." I can. I can jump higher than anything." He meant when the boy threw him, but of course he didn't want to say so. "Can you hop on your hind legs?" said the furry rabbit. That was a dreadful question, for the Velveteen rabbit had no hind legs at all. My goodness. The back of him was made all in one piece, like a pincushion. He sat still in the bracken and hoped that the other rabbits wouldn't notice. I don't want to go, he said. But the wild rabbits had very sharp eyes, and this one stretched out his neck, and he looked. "He hasn't gotten any legs. Look at that. Fancy a rabbit without any hind legs. Oh my gosh!" And he began to laugh. I have hind legs. I got legs. I'm just sitting on them." "Then stretch one of them out. Show me like this." And the wild rabbit, and he began to whirl around and dance till the little rabbit got quite dizzy. Oh my gosh. I I don't like dancing. I don't like dancing. I'd rather be still. But all the while he was longing to dance, for a funny, new, tickly feeling ran through him, and he felt he would give anything in the world to be able to jump around like this little rabbit did. The strange rabbit stopped dancing and came quite close, very, very close. He came so close that this time his long whiskers brushed up against the Velveteen rabbit. You see that? You see that? They're brushing up against him. Oh my gosh. Then suddenly he wrinkled his nose, he flattened his ears, and he jumped backwards. You know what? He doesn't smell right. Oh my gosh. You know what? He's not a rabbit at all. He's not real. I am real. I am real. I'm real. The boys said so. The boys said that I'm real. And then he nearly began to cry. Just then there was a sound of footsteps, and the boy ran past them. And with a stamp of feet and a flash of white tails, the two strange rabbits disappeared. "Come back and play with me," called the little rabbit. Oh no, come back and play with me. I know I am real. I know I'm real. But there was no answer. Only the little arms ran to and fro, and the bracken swayed gently, and the two strangers had passed. The Velveteen rabbit was all alone. Oh dear, he thought. Why did they run away like that? Why couldn't they just stop and talk to me and play with me? For a long time, he lay very, very still, watching the weeds, the bracken, and hoping that they would come back, but they never returned. And presently the sun sank lower, and the little white moths fluttered about, and the boy came, and he carried him home. See that? He's carrying him off. Weeks passed, and the little rabbit became very old and very shabby, but the boy loved him just as much. He loved him so hard, and he loved all his whiskers off, and the pink lining in his ears turned gray, and his brown spots faded out, and he even began to lose his shape, and he scarcely looked at the rabbit except to the boy. To him, he was always beautiful, and that was all that was that, and the rabbit cared about that. He didn't mind how he looked to other people, because the nursery magic had made him real. And when you are real, shabbiness doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, one little bit. And then one day, the boy was very ill. His face grew old, grew flushed, and he couldn't sleep. He talked in his sleep, and his little body was so hot that it burned the rabbit when it came close to him. Strange people came in and out of the nursery, and the light burned all night, and through the little Velveteen rabbit was there, hidden under the bedclothes. He never stirred, for he was afraid that, if they found him, someone might take him away. And he knew that the boy needed him. It was a long time, for the boy was too ill to play, and the little rabbit found it rather dull and nothing to do all day long. But he snuggled down patiently and looked forward to the time when the boy would be well again, and they would go out to the garden amongst the flowers and the butterflies and play splendid games in the raspberry thicket like they used to. All sorts of delightful things he planned, and while the boy lay half asleep, he crept up close to his pillow and whispered in his ear, and presently the fever turned. And guess what? The boy got better. Look at the bunny peeking out from under the covers. He was able to sit up in bed and look at picture books, just like this one, Well, the rabbit cuddled close to his side, and at one day it let him get up and get dressed. It was bright, sunny morning, and the windows stood wide open, and they carried the boy out to the balcony wrapped in a shawl, and the little rabbit was all tangled up against his comfy bedclothes, thinking, the boy's going to the seaside tomorrow. Everything was arranged, and now it was remained to carry out the doctor's orders. They talked all about it, and while the little rabbit lay under the bedclothes, and just his head peeping out, he listened. The room was to be disinfected, and all the books and all the toys that the boy had played with in his bed were to be burnt. "Well, hurrah!" said the rabbit. "Tomorrow, though, we shall go to the seaside." For the boy had often talked about the seaside, and he wanted very much to see big waves coming in, and the little crabs, and the little sand castles. He wanted to see that so badly. Okay, but look at what's coming. They're in the garden. See that? Okay. Then Nana caught sight of him. "How about this old bunny?" she said. "That," the doctor said. "Why, it's a mass of scarlet fever, a mass of germs. Burn it. Burn it at once." "What? Nonsense. Get him a new one. He mustn't have that anymore. It's covered with disease." And so the little rabbit was put into a sack with the old picture books and a lot of rubbish and carried out the end of the garden behind the fowl house. It was a fine place to make a bonfire, only the gardener was too busy just then to attend to it, and he had potatoes to dig, green peas to gather, corn to plow, but the next morning promised to come quite early and burn the whole lot together. That night the boy slept in a different bedroom, and he had a new bunny to sleep with him. It was a splendid bunny, all white and plush, but it could have been black, it could have been brown, with real glass eyes, but it was white, and the boy was too excited to care very much about it. Here it is. He was going to the seaside, and that in itself was such a wonderful thing he could think of nothing else. Okay, but while the boy was asleep, dreaming of the seaside, the little rabbit lay amongst the old picture books in the corner behind the house. He felt very lonely. In the sack it had left been untied, and so by wriggling out a little bit, he was able to get his head through the opening and look on out. You see him looking out there? You see him? Isn't he sweet? Let me give you a better view. He's looking out all over there. He thought of those long sunlit hours in the garden and how happy they were together, and great sadness then came over him. He seemed to see all this pass before him, and each more beautiful than the other. The fairy huts and the flower bed, the quiet evenings in the wood where he lay in the bracken and the weeds, and the ants ran all over his paws, the wonderful days when he first knew that he was real. He thought about the skin horse, so wise and gentle, and that all he had told him, all that he had done to mentor him. What was it to be loved and lose one's beauty and become real if it all ended up like this? And a real tear trickled down his shabby velvet nose, and it fell to the ground. Oh my gosh, it fell to the ground. And then a strange thing happened. Where the tear had fallen, a flower grew from the ground, a mysterious flower, not at all like any one that had ever grown in the garden. It had splendid green leaves, color of emeralds, and the center of the leaves a blossom like golden cups. It was so beautiful that the little rabbit forgotten to cry and lay there watching it. And presently the blossom opened, and out of it stepped a fairy. She was quite a lovely fairy in the whole world. Do you see her? Do you see her? Isn't she beautiful? She had pearls like dewdrops, and there were flowers round her neck and in her hair, and her face was like the most perfect flower of all. And she came close to the little rabbit and gathered him up in her arms, and she kissed him. And his velveteen nose, that was all damp from crying, she wiped away the tears. And she said, little rabbit, don't you know who I am?" The rabbit looked up to her, and it seemed to him that he had seen her face before, but he couldn't think of where. "I'm the nursery magic fairy," she said. "I take care of all the playthings that the children have loved. When they are old and worn out, when the children don't need them anymore, I come and take them away with me and turn them into real." Real with a capital R. "Wasn't I real before?" said the little rabbit. "You were real to the boy," she said, "because he loved you. Now you shall be real to everyone." And she held the little rabbit close to her arms, close to her heart, and she flew away with him into the woods. It was light now, and for the moon had risen, and all the forest was beautiful, and the fawns of the bracken shone like frosted silver in the open glades between the tree trunks where the wild rabbits danced, and their shadows on the velvet grass where they saw all of the other animals. And this I've got to show you. Look at all those animals. Rabbits, bunnies, deer. Aren't they beautiful? Isn't that a beautiful forest? And little bunnies who are real. Ah, little mouse too. And the little fairy. They stopped dancing around in the ring that they were dancing, and they stood and they stared at her. "I brought you a new playfellow," the fairy said. "You must be very kind to him and teach him all the needs to know in this rabbit land, for he's going to live with you forever and ever and ever." And they kissed the little rabbit again and again and put him down on the grass. "Besito," she said. "Run and play, little rabbit," she said. But the little rabbit sat quite still for a moment and never moved. For when he saw all the wild rabbits dancing around him, he suddenly remembered about his hind legs. Oh my gosh, he didn't want them to see that he was made all in one piece. He did not know that when the fairy kissed him, and the last time, she had changed him altogether, and he might have sat there a long time, too shy to move, if he just something hadn't tickled his nose. And before he thought he was going, she lifted him in his hind toe, and he lifted up to scratch it. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. He's scratching. And all the bunnies are looking. And he found that he had actually had hind legs. Look at that. Instead of dingy velveteen and brown fur and soft and shiny, his ears were twitching by themselves and his whiskers were so long that they brushed in the grass. He gave one leap of joy using those hind legs and was so great that he went springing about the turf all around them, jumping sideways, rolling around, dancing like the others did. And he grew so excited that when, at last, he did stop to look around, the fairy had gone. He was a real rabbit at last at home with the other rabbits. Dancing, dancing. Autumn passed and winter, and in the spring, when the days grew warm and sunny, the boy went out to play in the woods behind the house. And while he was playing, two rabbits crept out from the brackens, peeped out at him, and one of them was brown all over, but the other strange marking under his fur. And as though a long, long time ago, he spotted. The spots still showed through. And about this little soft nose, his round black eyes, there was something familiar, and the boy thought to himself, "Why, this looks just like my old bunny that I had lost when I had scarlet fever." But he never knew that it was really his own bunny come back to look at the child who had first made him real. And he was real. Velveteen Rabbit. How you become real. And your eyes and everything are all rubbed out. And you are real. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share this with you. My favorite book of all times, The Velveteen Rabbit. God bless you. Stay safe. Stay calm. Stay peaceful. Stay well.